There's a specific feeling you know better than almost anyone, the half second after you've said something, when your eyes flick to the other person's face to check what you did. You're not reading their answer, you're scanning for damage. Before the sentence is even finished, part of you is already bracing for how it landed, already rehearsing the apology in case it didn't. You call this being considerate. It feels like virtue. It is not virtue. It's a survival instinct wearing nice manners. Most people never examine it because it doesn't look like a wound. It looks like generosity. It looks like the version of you that remembers birthdays, answers every text within minutes, smooths things over before they ever fully crack. People call you easy to be with. They would never call you afraid, but that's what's underneath. Somewhere very early, you learned that being loved was conditional, and the condition was never your stillness. It was your usefulness. This isn't about being nice. Nice is a choice. What's running underneath you isn't a choice. It's a reflex, and reflexes don't ask permission. You feel disapproval before it's spoken, sometimes before it exists. A slight pause in someone's voice, a flicker across their eyes, a reply that takes longer than usual to arrive. Your body treats all of it the same way it would treat a physical threat, because to the part of your brain that built this pattern, it is one. Here's what nobody tells you about approval seeking. It was never about being liked. Liking is a social preference. What you're chasing is something older and far less optional, the felt sense that you are safe in a room. John Bowlby spent decades studying what happens when that safety becomes unreliable for a child. His conclusion wasn't poetic. A child's need for a dependable caregiver isn't an emotional nicety, it's a biological necessity, ranked with food and warmth. You didn't choose to need that, and no child does. When the reliability disappeared, your job became simple: stop needing it or guarantee it. You picked the second one because it was the only one that worked. You're 6 years old. Your mother is tired, and you can feel it before she said a word, the particular stillness in her shoulders, the shortened way she answers you. So you become smaller and more helpful at the same time. You bring her things without being asked. You laugh a little too quickly at things that aren't funny, just to hear the tension leave the room. Nobody taught you this. You built it yourself in real time out of necessity, because a calm mother was safer than an honest feeling. That child is still operating you, not metaphorically, structurally. The same scanning, the same preemptive softening, the same need to make sure the room stays calm before you're allowed to relax inside it. You think you're being agreeable now. You were being safe then. The two got fused so early that you've never had a version of yourself that could tell them apart. This is where it gets harder to sit with. Approval seeking isn't really about other people's opinions of you. It's about avoiding a specific feeling inside you, and that feeling has a name. June Tangney's research draws a sharp line between shame and guilt. Guilt says, I did a bad thing. Shame says, I am a bad thing. You can repair guilt with an apology. You can only manage shame by making sure it never gets triggered again, which means watching other people's faces before they get the chance to look at you the wrong way. You're not avoiding rejection. You're avoiding a verdict you already passed on yourself, the one you're terrified someone else will confirm out loud. And your body agrees with the threat assessment because it doesn't distinguish between social and physical danger the way you'd expect it to. Naomi Eisenberger's fMRI work at UCLA proved it directly. Participants played a simple ball-tossing game with 2 other players, and when those players started excluding them, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex lit up, the same region that activates during physical pain. You don't just feel left out. Your brain logs it as an injury in the same circuitry that would fire if someone struck you. So when you brace for someone's disappointment, you're not being dramatic. You're bracing for something your body has already classified as a wound. This is the part you're most likely to misread as weakness. It isn't. Roy Baumeister's research on the human need to belong found something blunt. Your need for connection isn't a preference layered on top of survival. It's one of survival's core requirements, on par with safety and shelter. For most of human history, an exiled person was a person who didn't survive long, and your nervous system still remembers that math. It isn't malfunctioning when it treats disapproval as danger. It's running code that kept your ancestors alive, just aimed now at a slammed door, a delayed reply, a friend's flat tone on the phone. Here's what that means. All at once, gathered into a single weight. Every time you've over-apologized for something that wasn't your fault, every time you've said yes while your whole body said no, every time you've rehearsed a text message 4 times before sending it, that wasn't a character flaw. That was a 6-year-old solution, still running, still convinced it's the only thing standing between you and being left. You built a self that could read a room before it could read a book, and the cost of that skill was a self that never quite finished performing because it was too busy managing everyone else's weather. It shows up everywhere now, not just with your mother. At work, you say yes to the project you don't have time for because saying no risks a flicker of disappointment from someone whose opinion shouldn't carry this much weight. In friendships, you absorb the joke that stung because naming it might cost you the relationship altogether, and some quiet part of you has never believed you'd survive being unliked. In romantic relationships, this is where it cuts deepest. You read a partner's silence as a verdict before they've said a word. You apologize first, reflexively, to end an argument you didn't start, because conflict itself feels less survivable than always being the one who folds. You're not choosing peace, you're choosing the only role you ever learned was safe to play. You might be thinking, but I actually am considerate. I actually do care what people think. You probably do. The two things aren't in conflict, they're tangled. Genuine care and frightened vigilance can live in the exact same gesture. The question isn't whether your kindness is real, it's whether you'd still be kind if no one were watching closely enough to be disappointed in you. The conventional explanation says people pleasers just want to be liked, that they're soft, maybe a little insecure. The neuroscience tells a colder story. You learned, before you had language for it, that your safety depended on managing someone else's internal state, and your brain has never been formally informed that the emergency ended. It is still running the original program in rooms where nobody is actually keeping score. The meeting where you over-explain a simple request, the dinner where you laugh at something unfunny to keep the temperature down. None of it is happening because the danger is real now. It's happening because the danger was real once, and the part of you that built the response never got the memo that you grew up. This is where the gap finally shows itself, the one underneath all of it. You didn't need someone to like you. You needed someone to stay steady enough that you didn't have to manage them. That's the love you were actually asking for every time you smoothed something over before it became a problem. Not admiration, not even affection exactly, just the simple, almost unbearable luxury of not having to perform safety in order to receive it. Most of the people in your life never knew you were asking for that because you never let it look like asking. You made it look like generosity. You made it look like being easy to love. This doesn't mean the people who shaped you were monsters. Most of them weren't. A mother who is quietly struggling and never named it isn't cruel. She's untreated and probably was raised the exact same way by someone whose own internal weather went just as unspoken. Understanding this isn't the same as excusing it, and it isn't the same as healing it either. It's seeing the architecture plainly enough to stop mistaking it for your personality. You are allowed to disappoint someone and survive it. You are allowed to leave a silence unfilled. You are allowed to send the message without rereading it 9 times, to let a friend sit with their own disappointment instead of rushing in to manage it for them, to find out slowly, uncomfortably, that the room does not collapse when you stop holding it up. The skill that kept a child safe is not the required adult that child became. It's just the only skill nobody told you were allowed to retire. You were never approval seeking. You were safety seeking in the only language a child has access to, and you're still speaking it to people who were never going to leave. You learned to read every room before you ever learned to rest in one.